We'll continue this morning's sharing, hearing from Ms. Nathania Christy, who is the head of TrendWatching Insights Singapore, Network, and the Asia-Pacific Trend Strategist for TrendWatching.com. Ms. Christy will be sharing how policymakers can leverage trends for public innovation. She's going to come up right now.
Good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here. My name is Nathania Christy, and I'm from TrendWatching. I'm not from Singapore, but been here for many, many years. I'll let you have a guess where I come from. I'm always so amused when I hear people guessing where I'm from, because they can come up with all sorts of different countries. But yeah, I've been here many years. I've tasted the education system. Love this country, love the people. But here, I'm from TrendWatching, and at TrendWatching, our obsession is on consumer trends. And usually when I speak at conferences, I will give you 3 trends that will be most important for your industry, for your market in the next 1 or 2 years. 3 trends, or 5 trends, 7 trends, depending on the amount of time that I have. But today, I want to take you all on a very different journey. And today, we're going to look at the question on how can all of you in this place make sense of all this disruption that's happening around you, make sense of change and get a handle on change, and to be able to spot trends and become your own trend watcher. So that is my mission for the next 20 minutes. I hope I can deliver this. But before we start, let's begin with a quick exercise. Now, if you are here, you use Uber or Grab, can you put your hands up? Okay, I'm sure everybody uses Uber or Grab. Now please stay, put your hands up still, keep them in the air, keep your hand up. Now imagine when you finish this summit, you want to go back home and everyone launched their Grab app and everyone wants to get on Grab and go home, and the app tells you that Grab is coming in 3 minutes. Now everyone still keep your hand up. Come on, a little exercise. Now keep your hand up if you are willing to wait for 3 minutes. All the hands are still up. Keep your hand up if you're willing to wait for 5 minutes. Wow. 7 minutes? 9 minutes? 12 minutes? 15 minutes? No more hands. This is very interesting. So basically, you are not alone in this experiment, because why? A few years back, Uber did a study actually in the US, and they found out that the longer Uber has been in a city, the less willing to wait people become. And they replicate the studies in 9 other cities, and the results are the same. There's a shifting patience, and the longer Uber has been in a city, the less willing to wait people become. Now, if you think about it, rewind a few years back when all we have is just ComfortDelGro taxi. And you want to book a taxi, you call ComfortDelGro, and it tells you that, oh, your taxi will arrive in 5 or 10 to 15 minutes. You would have no other choice, and you would wait for ComfortDelGro. And more often, you would not even be ready by the time the taxi arrives, right? So what I'm seeing here is that all of you are now becoming less patient because of Uber and because of Grab. And what Uber has done is Uber has subtly rewired our expectation when it comes to engaging with a brand in transport. Uber has makes us less patient. Uber has changed the way we expect how convenient and how seamless a service could be. So now, I want you to hold on for this thought for a while and keep it at the back of your mind, because this will be very central to what I'm about to tell you in the next 16, 18 minutes that I have with you. But before that, just a little bit of background about TrendWatching. We are a consumer trends firm. We are headquartered in London, but we have offices around the world in New York, in Lagos, in Sao Paulo, in Amsterdam, and one in Singapore as well to oversee the Asia market. And what we do is we track consumer trends, we track innovations across the world, and we try to come up with insights as to what will people want next, what will consumers want next, citizens, users, they're all one and the same people. And after doing this for many, many years, we sit down with the beginner's mindset and we put our methodology of doing things, end-to-end methodology from what is a trend, how do you spot a trend, how can you make sense of the changes around you, and how can you use that trend insight to actually launch great innovations. And so the result of that process is this book called the Trend-Driven Innovation Methodology, published by Wiley a few years back. Now, to save you all from having to read the book, I'm going to summarize the essence of the book. And basically, the central idea of this book is that at TrendWatching, we try to answer this question of what will consumers want next. And it's a very difficult question to answer. And one metaphor to show you how the business landscape looks like today. It's like this, it's a constant avalanche of new products, new services, new disruptors, new technology coming into the market, and it's hard to make sense of things. There are new technologies like the facial recognition and AI, and it's being used in China to track criminals by the police. People have mixed reactions about that. And now we also think that influencers are the way to go, right? People should use influencers to engage with the young consumers, but then there's a backlash as well. So what do people want? And we also see disruptors not always getting it right as well. This is Airbnb, and in China, they launched this spectacular experience to stay in the Great Wall, but actually, not everyone thinks that it's a good idea. Plus, consumers are just weird. Sometimes they do things that you don't understand. And as business professionals, as people in the government sector, you try to make sense of all this change. And amidst all of these things that's happening at the same time, it's hard to find balance. It's hard to make sense of things, let alone draw any meaning from it, let alone try to come up with the next innovation, the next initiative that people will love. So what is the answer? What will people want next? How do you satisfy and delight people amidst all of this disruption? This is an age-old question, and so there's many ways that people out there try to answer this question. One way is, of course, well, you want to know what the consumers want, just ask them, right? Do surveys, focus group discussion, learn about the consumers. But we know from the days of Henry Ford and more recently Steve Jobs, people don't know what they want until you give it to them. In the days of Henry Ford, if Henry Ford were to ask the consumers, what do you want? They will say faster horses, and there will be no cars. So this method is limited, and it doesn't give you radical insights to what people will want next. So, okay, let's not watch them, let's observe them and then act accordingly. But ethnographic research, field studies, they are very slow, they are expensive, and at the pace of change that's happening in the world right now, once you finish with all the studies and you launch it into the market, it could be obsolete already. And so what is the quickest, a good way, another alternative way to understand people and give services that are user-centric? So at TrendWatching, our counterintuitive secret is this, that we don't ask the consumers, but we watch business innovations. So innovations is the new unit of analysis. And when we say innovation, it could be innovation in business model, in marketing campaign, in products, in services, in experience. But before we even jump into that, let's take a step back and understand why is innovations important, and where is that place for innovation in the whole consumer trends world and for the consumers. So at TrendWatching, so there's a lot of definition for trends, right? It could be fashion trends, macro trends, but at TrendWatching, we are interested in understanding consumer trends, and this is our definition of consumer trends. It is a new manifestation among people of a fundamental human need, want, or desire. But more importantly than what is a trend is how does a trend emerge? So trends emerge when innovators address people's basic needs and wants in novel ways. So that's a lot going on in there. So let's break down the model a little bit further. So at TrendWatching, how do we understand this consumer trends, this change that's happening around us? So our models say that on one hand, there's change. The world is changing all the time. There's technological change, societal change, new disruptors, new technologies. We all know that the world is changing. But one thing that sometimes people, business professionals, forget is that we're the same old humans with the same old human needs. We have this basic needs for connection. We have this basic needs to be understood, to be supported, basic need for empathy, for convenience, for simplicity, for authenticity. And this doesn't change year on year, season to season, even centuries, because that's just how humans are wired. So something interesting happens when people with their sets of basic needs interact with new changes that is around them. There's attention, and innovators who makes great innovations will resolve that tension. They will address people's basic needs, fundamental needs in a new way, making use of new technology that satisfy people's needs. And so when you understand basic needs, when you understand drivers of change, and you look to innovations, you can understand consumer trends, because trends are simply patterns in changing behavior for consumers, for people. But something interesting happens when new innovations are being launched into the market, and we call that emerging expectations. So when innovations, great innovations are being launched and it unlocks a new way of serving people's basic needs, it creates a new expectations. And this expectation, once they are created, it will spread across like wildfire. It will spread beyond markets, beyond industries, beyond demographic groups. And we call that concept expectation transfer. So now this is where we can go back to our exercise earlier about the Uber example. So imagine a few years back when Uber was first launched, it creates this expectation of a one-touch service, on-demand service that is in the transport industry. But then a few years later, you see in FMCG, a different industry. Amazon launched this dash button, and it's basically multiple buttons that you can place all around your house, and you can just press that button and have services and products delivered to your door. If you need more tissue, you need more detergent, all sorts of things. So this is a different industry, but the same expectation is at play. And then you see it being transferred again to Indonesia, where there's Gojek, and it offers one-touch, on-demand lifestyle service, from massage to salon to courier service and all of these things. And most recently, we saw Grab. It partnered with Ping An from China to deliver on-demand medical services. So it again transferred beyond markets, beyond industries, beyond demographic groups. And in the future, soon enough, in 2020, you can have on-demand with your shower. So this is what we mean by looking at innovations, asking yourself, what is the emerging expectations that's being created out of those innovations, and tracking where they spread. And it will spread until it comes to your door. And so we say that people live in an expectation economy. And so it begs you to ask the question, whatever your industry that you are in, public sector, private sector, when you look at the consumers, consumers don't live in industry silos. Only brands live in industry silos. So look at all the best-in-class innovators out there, because Red Bull can be your competitor for the marketing. Singapore Airlines can be your competitor for their customer service. Spotify can be your competitor for the way they personalize music. So all these best-in-class innovators can be your competitor because of this expectations that's being created for the consumers. And that's why everything that we do at TrendWatching is fueled by this. This is Twin, TrendWatching Innovation, and TrendWatching Insight Network. This is the community of professionals that I'm leading all across the world. We have 1,000 plus professionals, and what they do every day is they submit innovations all around the world, and we analyze and discuss the innovations, and our analyst team from all across the world, we sit down and we ask ourselves, what is the pattern here? What is the emerging expectations? And therefore, how can we help brands, professionals, make sense of these insights, of these innovations, and apply the same expectations to their own innovations, be it products, services, policies even. And so now to Now that you understand this framework, this thinking of looking into change, basic needs, and asking yourself the emerging expectation, let's take a look at 5 different innovation examples and put that understanding into practice. So the first example is this WeChat mini programs from China. I'm sure many of you know this already. This is a one single app, but inside of that app there's mini programs, and it can pop up contextually depending on your location. It can tag your location, and it can also use QR codes for you to scan, and then contextual services will just come to your door. And so when we see examples like this, and we see others that are similar to this in different markets, we come up with this trend that we call contextual omnipresence. And it's all about how, fueled by this driver of change of people jumping on into mobile devices, and with the same set of basic needs of people wanting convenience, wanting simplicity, people are now expecting brands to be not just omnipresent, but to be contextual. And WeChat mini program is so successful that after just 1 year of development, there's more WeChat mini programs than apps on the Apple Store across 4 years. There's even, you can even use WeChat to book for a divorce appointment. And so this is what we mean by putting trend into action and understanding innovations in the lens of trends. And so we say goodbye to apps, because the future is contextual services. And how are people and other businesses applying this? The government of PALAU, it's an island nation, they make use of this insight, and what they do is they use People's Passport as a channel to reach and engage the audience. There's so much interest around sustainability these days, and island nation of Palau, they rely on tourism, and so they want the island to be well preserved. And so basically they created this stamp. It's a pledge, and the pledge allows the people, the tourists who are coming to the island nation of Palau, to actually commit to be responsible, to act kindly, to tread lightly, and not destroy the environment. And whoever saw Passport as anything more than functional, right? But island nation of Palau are able to reimagine it, to make it more than functional, and to reach people at the right time and at the right place, right before they even cross and enter the nation. So that is one example. Talking about sustainability, we also see this example from Canada. This is a butcher called GREENFIELD Natural Meat. And interestingly, this butcher actually asked people to eat less meat. They created this campaign called the Meatless Monday, and they asked people to eat less meat, even though they're a butcher. So what is the bigger takeaway here? What is the trend that we observe? Is that brands are now becoming more and more human. We have a trend that we call human brands and moments of truth, and it's all about how, with trust being lost in many big institutions, people are becoming more and more skeptical, and they demand brands to be honest and to support the consumers. If the consumers, if there's an issue facing your industry, facing your business, how can you show support to the consumers instead of fight the consumers? And so we see this trend of how bold initiatives, shocking moments, shocking campaigns that has a dose of honesty will seize the day, and that's what consumers are increasingly being drawn towards. Another example, we see how in Asia especially, there's so many sharing platform and so many data being collected. There's 7.43 billion rides by TT Choosing alone, and compared to Uber, there's 4 billion worldwide. So what does it mean? What is the trend that we observe when we see all this massive amount of data being collected in Asia? We saw TT Choosing, they use that data and they actually create solutions for everyone, not just for its own consumers. They leverage on the data that they have and created this real-time traffic monitoring service. And we see more and more brands around the world, they're doing this as well. They're open sourcing solutions for people who are not just their consumers, but society in general. And so we come up with this trend called open source solution, and that is all about how consumers will embrace brands that solve problems for everyone. Last example, in the US, we saw this financial gym. So financial gym is a financial institution that offer insurance, but they understand that the young consumers, they go to the gym so often, and sometimes they don't even pay. There's so many college debt, universities debt, but they spend so much on fitness. And so instead of ridiculing, making fun of this young generations, they offer some support and talk to the young consumers in the young consumers lingo. And so they created this financial gym, and it has like some financial fitness assessment. There's personal trainers. They use these terminologies that addresses and speaks to the heart of the young consumers. And so we see this, and we see others examples that are like it, and we realize that there's this trend, and we call it assisted development, and it's all about how brands are giving support, showing empathy to the young consumers, and helping them to reach and attain markers of adulthood. And so young consumers will look to brands increasingly to teach them life skills and help them realize life goals. Now, you may have questions. Okay, so we're watching innovations, we're trying to understand innovations to be able to make sense of change, but what if the innovation failed? But the important thing is to ask yourself, what is the emerging expectation that is being created out of those innovations more than the success or failure of the innovation itself? Because consumers don't have to use the service, they only have to see it for the expectations to be created. Also look past the ridiculous. This is a self-parking slippers in Japan. Who would need this? But you see that when people see this kind of innovation, they will think, why can't another company, offering another service, give me that kind of convenience? So expectations are created through innovations like this, even though the innovations can fail or it can be ridiculous. So I hope in the last 20 minutes I've offered you one small way for you to have a new way of seeing the world around you and to make sense of changes, disruption around you, because this is very powerful when you look at disruption coming your way, and more than it being an onslaught and becoming overwhelming. But if you can look at it and you interrogate it and scrutinize it for what is the drivers of change that is driving these innovations, and what is the basic needs for humans that is being satisfied out of this. So more and more changes coming your way, the more you can analyze them, the more you can make sense actually of things that's happening around you, and becomes empowering rather than overwhelming. But it's not enough to just understand and make sense. You have to go one step further and apply it. So we have this consumer trend canvas. As you can see, it's hugely inspired by the business model canvas. They're our partners, and we do workshops together. You can download this for free, and you can use this to take a trend, deconstruct the trend, make sense of the trend, and come up with innovations that are based on the trends and what the users are thinking and experiencing around that trend. And this is a toolkit that we have. If you join the workshop this afternoon, you can have a chance to tinker with the toolkit. And basically, all of this in the last 20 minutes, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but I hope it has been useful for you. But feel free to ask me any questions after the session as well. If not, thank you very much. I really enjoy today, so thank you.